I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what we're going to be talking about today, and then I'm going to let him take it away. So Marcus had humble beginnings as an entrepreneur. He started a swimming pool company in the back of a beat up truck, and then went on to save it during the 2008 economic crash and become one of the largest manufacturers and installers in the country. Today, Marcus is a highly sought after international keynote speaker. He has been dubbed a web marketing guru by the New York Times. And in 2017, Forbes, they named Marcus one of the 20 speakers you don't want to miss. So those of you on today, not missing a thing. In this session, Marcus is going to speak based on his book that sold over 150,000 copies around the world. It was named one of the top 5 marketing books of all time. It's called They Ask, You Answer. And it addresses 2 important questions. How do we evolve our business model to fit the demands of a dramatically more informed, less patient, and more digital customer? And 2, how can we establish our brand and business as the voice of trust in our space while attracting enough customers and standing out above the noise? A reminder that this is an interactive session. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat button and a Q&A button. We encourage you to use those throughout at any time you have a question or comment for Marcus, and we'll answer that. And without further ado, Marcus, I'm going to let you do your thing.
Right. Welcome, everyone. We're going to have about an hour together today, a little bit less now. And I think we're going to have a great conversation. I want you to feel like you can jump in anytime and ask questions. I actually prefer the chat. You can use the Q&A. I like the chat because I can't focus on, more than one thing at a time. And so I'm going to say some things for those that haven't read the Ask You Answer that you're probably not going to agree with. That's good because we come here to be challenged, right? Be challenged on our thinkings. And those that have read it, you're going to get more ideas, further ideas, and we can talk about how to crystallize some of those ideas. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. As always, I want to start with some of the foundational trends, and we're going to look at 2 of these major trends as we get started here, and then we're going to work off of that. Okay, so first one. So studies have shown that today's buyer, on average, is 80% through the buying cycle before they actually reach out to a company. So before they talk to a salesperson, on average, we're 80% home. Now, you might say it's a little bit higher, it's a little bit lower, but I think this is so critical because let's go back 25 years when the internet's just getting started, 25 years ago, okay? What was this number then? It's probably 20 to 30%. Today's at 80%. So the question is for you, me, and everybody that's watching this is where is this number going to be over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And what does it mean for sales? What does it mean for marketing? Now, here's what's really interesting. And I'm going to ask everybody to do me a favor at different times today. And I'm going to ask you to use the chat. This is going to help us to have a better conversation. All right. And so here's what I want you to go ahead and put in the chat, if you would, and just make sure you send it to everyone, not just hosts and panelists when you answer these. This way, everybody, unless you have a private question, but when I'm asking like a poll question, go ahead and do it for everybody. If I went to your sales team right now, here's the number that I want you to put in chat. If I went to your sales team right now and I said to them, what percentage of the sales process do you dictate in sales? What would the average member of your sales team say? So go ahead and type that in chat and be super honest, okay? Be super honest. This is really important for you to think about and to recognize because a lot of companies are getting pushback from sales teams when it comes to all things digital. Why does this happen? What happens because they don't understand what this number or this trend is all about. So let's just look at the numbers. Okay, it's really spread out so far. So you've got everything from 60%, 90%, 80%, and we have a few that are less than 50 or 35%, right? And so as a whole, this group represents many of those in the marketplace. In other words, what's happening is sales teams are saying, we're still controlling so much of this. Of course, the problem with that is if they're thinking they're controlling everything, that so much of the sales process is influenced by them, they're much less likely to help marketing, and they're much less likely to really catch the vision of what's possible when we integrate content into the sales process. All right. So we're going to look at that today. That's going to be fun. Okay. So good stuff. Appreciate all those answers. Really well done. Now let's look at one other trend. So recent studies have shown, this was Gartner, I believe, but recent studies have shown that 33% of all buyers say they would now prefer to have a seller-free sales experience, 33%. And for millennials, that number is 44%. All right. And so the question I would have for you, and you don't need to put this in chat, I want you to think about it. What does this trend mean to your business? And it's tied to the 80%, right? Because we as buyers and consumers, we're vetting companies more than we've ever vetted them in our lives. We're learning so much that we're getting to the point where we don't want to be forced to engage with a human until we have to talk with a human. That's where we are right now. And this seller-free trend is a big deal because if you think about it, a lot of sales departments are pushing back on the idea of seller-free because in their mind, they're thinking, I'm going to get replaced. And what replaces a sales team is not paying attention to the trends of the marketplace. The best sales teams and the biggest sales teams are the ones that the best marketing departments in 2022 and beyond. No question about that. They've got the most stuff to do, the most work, and it's way more fulfilling and enjoyable because the average lead is much more qualified, much more learned. Now, with this seller-free phenomena, we have to allow our buyers or potential buyers and customers to do more on the website, stuff that traditionally they would have necessarily had to have learned from a salesperson. They can learn on the site. And that might be through content, be it text or video. That might be through some interactive tool, like a calculator or an assessment tool. But this is the trend that we all pay attention to so very much. And most businesses, frankly, are not like we need to. So we should be having like our last thought of the day. What does seller free mean to my business? B2B, B2C, it's going to affect all of us dramatically in the years that lie ahead. Now, my quick story, I used to be a pool guy. I started a fiberglass swimming pool company in 2001. Things were going okay up until this particular date. Most of you know or remember what this date is. That was the day of the crash. Not a good day for pool guys and gals out there. In fact, within 48 hours of the crash, we had 5 people that withdrew their deposit. These people that had put down a deposit on a pool and said, "Hey, I want to get a pool from River Pools." Well, they withdrew that deposit, so we lost $250,000 in the first 48 hours, and then over the coming weeks, it got worse and worse. By January of 2009, we're going over that proverbial edge that some of you are probably familiar with, and I thought we were going to lose it all. I thought I was going to lose my house, right? I thought I was going to have to let go of my 16 employees at the time. And I was really, really scared and really stressed out. But that's the beauty behind stress and pain, is it forces us to look outside of our traditional box. And we're going to look way outside of that traditional box today. And we're going to talk about how we got back over that edge and how, of course, you heard earlier from Leah that we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And we exploded, we became a manufacturing company, the whole nine. Now, before we get there, I've got a big fear that always needs to be addressed when we have these conversations. There's something really odd about audiences. So half the audiences I meet with, and I've had this great job for about 10 years now. I still own a pool company, I own an agency, but I also get to speak all over the world. You can divide most audiences in half. Half of audiences will hear something and say, I could see how that could work for us. I could see how that could apply. And the other half of audiences will say, that might have worked for you as a pool guy in Virginia, Marcus, but you see, my company, we're different. We're special. We're unique. The reality is, there's one thing that binds all of us together as businesses: emotion that allows someone to give you their money in exchange for good or service. And of course, what is that emotion? It's the emotion of trust. If I said to you, is trust going to be fundamental to your company's success in 10 years and 20 years? What would you say? You'd say, yeah, of course it is, Marcus. And so if we look at that and say, okay, well, so trust is a principle, it's not going to go away, then we can be built to last. Because if we design our digital strategies, sales, marketing, etc., around how can we become the most trusted voice, well, then we're going to be unstoppable come what may. Whatever new platforms come, whatever platforms go, we're going to be ready. So we're going to be a principle-based organization. I want you to be principle-based. I want you to think, how can I become the most trusted voice in my space? That truth. I'm going to show you exactly how you do that. I'm going to give you a simple framework today. Of course, it's found in They Ask You Answer. But if you want to become the most trusted voice, you've come to the right place. All right. So when we were going over that edge at River Pools, I started obsessing about the internet, and I was reading all these fancy phrases online like inbound marketing, content marketing, social media, blogging, all that stuff. And what I heard, my simple pool guy mind was, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions and you're willing to address those questions through text, through video on your website, you just might save your business. So I said, well, shoot, that's one thing that we can absolutely do. And so I called this philosophy, they ask, you answer. And I can remember brainstorming one night all the questions I had gotten over the years with respect to in-ground swimming pools. And I had over 100. And then over the next 2 years, every single night, late at night, I would answer those questions through text and video. And They Ask You Answer, of course, would go on to become a book. It has been now translated in many languages, and some of you are reading it right now, what I heard in the chat, which is really, really cool. But what is They Ask You Answer? It's an obsession with the questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns of your buyers, and the willingness to address those on your website through text, through video. Okay, we're going to look at it deeper, but that's the essence of They Ask You Answer. Now, let's say you want to become the voice of trust in your space. Quick audit, okay? Quick audit for everyone. Quick audit for everyone. If you want to become the voice of trust in your space, and we're going to look at this today, you've got to be willing to do 3 main fundamental things that your competitors are not doing. Number 1, you've got to be willing to talk about that which others in your space are not willing to talk about. This is interesting because lots of times I'll ask folks, do you talk about things on your website right now that nobody in your space talks about, or almost no one in your space talks about? People say, oh yeah, I talk about it. And I'll say, well, what is it? And they'll explain it. And I say, it sounds like something I would see on all your competitors' website. I'm talking about stuff that really almost no one in your space talks about. So that's number 1. Do you do that? Number 2, are you willing to show that which nobody else in your space is willing to show? And this is particularly through video, right? Are we willing to show the thing? There's many things that we can show, but are willing to show it. We're embracing that seeing is believing mindset. And then finally, number 3, we must be willing to sell in a way others aren't willing to sell. Most innovation that's happening with business today isn't occurring with you inventing some widget or object. It's occurring by these 3 things that you're seeing on the screen right now. If you're talking about showing or selling in a way that your competitors are not, you are innovative. And you're probably leaving everyone in the dust if you're doing it seriously, as we've seen many times with those that are applying They Ask You Answer, right? So I ask you, how many are you doing? You don't have to put in chat. All right, I'll save that. But I want you to think about it. Be honest. Be honest. Okay. Most companies, instead of embracing They Ask You Answer, they instead embrace what we call the ostrich mindset, the most prolific marketing model in the world. It's burying our head in the sand when we have those questions, worries, fears addressed to us by our potential customers. The problem, of course, with the ostrich, other than the fact that it really doesn't bury its head in the sand, that's a myth, but the problem is the problem never goes away. In other words, if we just ignore the thing, if we ignore the question, is it just magically going to disappear? Of course, the answer is no. And so we can't be the ostrich, especially if we want to become the most trusted voice in our space. This is why we have discovered that there's essentially 5 subjects that the most trusted businesses are willing to discuss on their websites that nobody else is. And there's 5 subjects, just so happens, that buyers, consumers research before they reach out to a company. This is B2B and B2C. This is service, this is product. Like I said, this is a trust-based conversation. There's no exceptions. So we're not going to put ourselves in the corner if we're different today, because we're not. And so with respect to these 5 things, again, these are the things that your buyers, your potential customers want to research and understand before they reach out to you during that 80%. Yet so many businesses won't talk about them. Here's the 5, and they haven't changed for 10 years, going strong since I've been talking about They Ask You Answer. More important today than ever. And they are. As buyers, as consumers, we're obsessed with how much is it? What are the problems or the negatives with it? In other words, what could go wrong? How does it compare to this other thing that I'm looking at? What is everybody saying about it? And what is the best it? And those are the big 5. And again, most companies don't like to talk about those things. Now, another moment of self-awareness. You did great on the first poll. Let's do another live poll. All right. Before we get into these, I promise I'm going to explain to you how to do each one of these on your website well. But I want you to just be super honest. And once again, in the chat, here's what I want you to type in. Okay. All right. What percentage of your content that's in your blog or your learning center or whatever you call it on your site, the articles, educational content that you have on your site, what percentage is related to these 5 things? What percentage is related to these 5 things? Go ahead and put a percentage in the chat. All right. What percentage of your content on the site is related to these 5 things? All right. So now we're going to start to see a different group of numbers. Okay. All right. So most companies are less than 10%. And almost always, if somebody gives me a number, I can divide it by 3, and that's the actual number. I'm not saying this is going to be you all, but these are most people that come my way. In other words, when I show this and then we do a live audit with someone, almost always it's about a third of what they say when we really start to look at it. So let's analyze these together, and I promise they're going to make a lot of sense. We want to start with cost. Okay, let's start with cost. This one's incredibly important, and this is one of those that it continues. It's amazing to me how problematic this is. This is prolific with service-based businesses, with B2Bs, with manufacturers, and it's a big problem. It's a big problem. So let's analyze our own behavior first, because this is key. If you want to really become great at internet marketing, digital marketing, etc., and build your brand online, you've got to be incredibly self-aware of how you behave online. So let's analyze our behavior. So when you're on a website and you're looking for cost and price information for a product, for a service, doesn't matter what, and you can't find it, what's the emotion you experience? Of course, you get frustrated, right? Now, in that moment of frustration, do you say to yourself, well, it's got to be here somewhere. I'm just going to keep looking on this website until I find it. You don't say that, do you? In fact, we've done the studies on this. Guess how long somebody will stay on your website looking for cost and price information until they leave? We found it's about 10 seconds, and it's getting less, okay, because they're getting pretty impatient. Now, in this moment of frustration, do you as the buyer, do you as the searcher, do you say to yourself, well, of course they can't talk about cost and price. They're a value-based business. I'm going to call them on the phone instead. Do you do that? No, you don't do that, because you as the buyer, you as the searcher, you keep doing what? That's right. You keep searching, and you search until what happens? That's right. You find what you were looking for. And generally speaking, whoever gives you what you were looking for, they're going to get what? That's right. They're going to get your business. If not your business, they're going to get first contact, first phone call, right? So that's that 0 moment of truth, that 80% that we talked about, that initial moment they reach out to you, they're more likely to reach out to you. Now, with that being said, the real reason we get so upset as buyers, as consumers in this moment, is because we know as the buyer that they know as the business the answer. And because we know they know the answer, or at least a semblance of the answer, they could explain to us something, and they're not, we now feel like they're doing what? That's right. They're hiding something from us. And the moment you feel like anybody is hiding anything from you online, what happens? Of course, trust is gone. That being said, are you talking about cost and price on your website right now? Now, some of you are saying, no, I'm not doing it. Now, there's 3 major reasons why companies don't talk about cost and price. First reason is we say, well, every job is different. It depends. Okay, we have a very customized solution. All right, I got it, right? That's number 1. That's the most common. It depends. But if I came to you and I said, how much is your stuff, that thing that you offer, that product, that service? Could you explain the factors that drive the cost up? Yes. Could you explain the factors that drive the cost down for that particular product or service? Yes. Could you explain why some companies are more expensive? Of course you could. Could you explain why some companies in your industry are less expensive? Yes. Once again, of course you could. And could you explain roughly where you fall? Of course you could. You see, the thing about the it depends is you don't have to say exactly how much it is on your website, the thing that you'll offer. But if you're not willing to explain these factors, I will learn how much it is, and I will learn what we call value proposition from someone else in the space. And I don't know about you, but I hate that idea. Now, the second reason why we don't like to talk about cost and price is we say things like, well, we tend to be more expensive. And if we're more expensive, we just might scare them away. But what we've seen time and time again is the thing that actually scares us away online is when companies don't address that which we want to know. In other words, ignorance is not bliss. No, it's not. So it's not the fact that they explained cost and what drives cost to us that scares us away, but rather the fact that they didn't go there at all. And they said, call for quote, or whatever the thing was. That's the second reason. And the third reason we like to say we don't talk about cost and price is we're afraid our competitors might find out. Now, what's funny about that is if I came to you or any of your salespeople and I said, do you have a pretty good sense as to what your competitors charge? What would they say? They'd say, of course. Yeah, Marcus. I mean, I've been in the game for a long time. I've got a good sense. And so if you have a good sense as to what your competitors charge, it therefore means what? Right. They've got a good sense as to what you charge. You see, this is the big secret, non-secret. Everybody acts like nobody knows what everybody's charging, when in reality, everybody has a pretty good sense as to what everybody else is charging. Besides that, when was the last time your competitors paid your bills? They haven't, right? So some of you are still saying, but you don't understand my business, Marcus. No, I do understand your business. I do. Enough to know that we must become the voice of trust. We can't ignore what buyers want to know. And so stay with me. When we embrace this philosophy, if they ask you answer for a swimming pool company, no swimming pool company in the world, had addressed how much does a fiberglass pool cost on their website. Why? They're afraid. Every job is different. It's customized. I don't want my competitors to see it. I don't want to scare them away when they see the cost of a pool. That's not what scares them away. What scares them away, as we talked about, is not knowing those things. So we openly talked about cost and price. We said it's a lot like buying a car. We explained all the options and accessories that would dictate that pricing, what drives costs up and down, and why some companies are expensive, why some companies are cheap, and roughly where we fall. Because we did that, something really magical happened. Let me show you what happened. Here's a list of the number one. When you search these phrases in the next 48 hours, we were the first ones you saw on the left side of the page, not ads, of course. This is organic search results. Now, that's not a win yet because we got to translate it to revenue. So let's translate it to revenue. Here's a list of the number one phrases that generated the most traffic to the website over the next few years. So this is pretty cool. Let's check it out. So, for example, we had 13,000 people go to Google and type in fiberglass pool prices. Of those 13,000, 30 of them filled out a form and said, I want to get a quote from you. So the numbers that you're seeing right now on the right side of the page, these are folks that filled out a form and said, I want to get a quote. Those are essentially sales appointments. The red arrows are phrases that when somebody searched that, they landed on that article. How much does a fiberglass pool cost? So we've got roughly 200 plus sales appointments that occurred from people that originally landed on that article. How much does a fiberglass pool cost? Now, here's the very important question. If that article is never written, how many of those sales appointments would have ever occurred? That's right. Almost none, probably. Why? Because they wouldn't have found us. But in this case, they did find us. Why? Because we were willing to talk about the thing and we weren't the ostrich with our head in the sand. And so because of that, many of these people that filled out the form, we know their names. Many of them ended up having a sales appointment. Many of them bought. We know the value of their pools, and I can add it all up. And as we've been continuing to grow as a business, I've been continuing to track the value of this one single article and how much revenue it's generated. And I can tell you without equivocation that it's now generated at a bare minimum $25 million in sales that I can see on paper. It's actually a lot more than that, but that's 25 million I can see on paper, all because we were willing to talk about how much does it cost. So am I saying that you have to put a definitive price list on your website? No. What are we saying? That we need to be willing to teach what drives cost, value proposition. Why are some companies expensive? Why are some companies so cheap? In other words, when you produce a cost piece of content on your website, we've done this with hundreds of companies now. 80% of it isn't anything about you. 80% is all about the industry. Again, what drives costs up? What drives it down? Why are some companies so expensive? Why are some companies so cheap? That's 80% of the article, the video, etc. You should have a pricing page on your website. And under that pricing page, you have, for every major product or service you sell, you have one article or video, or preferably both, that does a deep dive into cost and price. Remember, folks, educating the marketplace doesn't commoditize. What commoditizes is when the marketplace sees products or services, they think they're the same value because they don't know any better and thus choose the cheapest thing. That's called commoditization. But when they know better, when they've been educated, they will choose the more expensive thing because they understand value. So I'm asking you to educate, and if you educate them well, you will decommoditize the thing that you sell. And this is where everybody's headed. This is where everybody's headed. And so I want everybody to do me a favor. Now, this is a chance where we get to get better. Okay. This is a chance where we get to get a lot better. Now, I want you to put, if you were going to produce a cost piece of content. Now, let me give you an example for cost content for a fiberglass pool company. Okay. I would want to do an article or a video on how much does a fiberglass pool cost? That's obvious. How much does an in-ground pool cost? That'd be separate. Okay. But it's a separate one. It's a very important one. How much does a concrete pool cost? Why do I want to do that? Because if you're researching concrete pools, it means you're in the pool market. So I want you to learn from me so I can inject myself in that conversation. How much does a vinyl liner in-ground pool cost? That's another type of in-ground pool. How much does an above ground pool cost? You might say, why would you want to address how much does an above ground pool cost? Because what's interesting about this is some people are thinking about putting a fiberglass pool above the ground. And so because of that, they just naturally search how much does an above ground pool cost, but they're thinking about an in-ground pool. But there's also some people that are looking at an above ground versus an in-ground and comparing. You see, I want to own all those. I want to talk about all of them. And these are separate pieces of content that would go on my website. Now, I only sell fiberglass pools. You see what I'm saying? Now, if you sell multiple services or products, you might say to yourself, well, how would I handle that? You start with the 20% that generate 80% of your revenue, and that's where you start. So I want you to go ahead and write in the chat a cost article that you would do in a complete sentence. Like, what would the title be? How much does such and such cost? Now, this is important that you put it in as a complete sentence because I'm going to help clarify what you might think is a good title. I'm going to clarify it for you and show what a really good title is online, because most companies do this wrong. Even if they've read, they ask you answers. So if you've read, or even if you've done it already on your website. Okay. So how much does it cost? Good, Kale. How much does it cost for to hire a headhunter? It's a really good one. Now, what you might want to do, Kale, even further on that is you might want to do 4. So in other words, what type of headhunter, right? So specificity generally wins the day online. And so the mistake that a lot of people make is they're not specific enough. Okay, how much does a home inspection cost? I think that's pretty good, Benjamin. Now, what you can do also for you, Benjamin, because homes and construction, it varies from area to area, that one I would probably potentially do it for different areas. Or I might say, well, how much does a home inspection cost in Virginia? But then I would break down some of the different areas like Northern Virginia, where I don't live, versus the Northern Neck, which is a country area where I live. It's a very different cost for a home inspection. And so I would actually talk about some of the different areas so people understood, and that would probably do really, really well. So adding the area for that's pretty powerful. How much should I pay for a home inspection? That also you could do, but I think you understood my point there, Benjamin. It's good. How much does a virtual assistant cost? I think that's a good starter, Emily, but I would argue, can you be even more specific? In other words, we've gotten to the point where there's different types of virtual assistants, right? And so I would try to be even more specific if you can. Can't always, but it's a good starting point. How much does one of your homes really cost after you add all the options? Now, Erica, that's a good question for like the user experience of your site, but it's not a good question for search. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't put it out there. It just means that I would state it in a way that people potentially would search it, right? Still good. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so good thoughts. You're starting to get it. And we're going to do some more of this here in a second, okay? So let's look at problems for a second. Let's look at problems. Hopefully everybody from that one is saying, you know what? I can totally talk about cost and price on my website. Like, yeah, you totally can. Let's talk about problems. Problems is the second of the big 5. A lot of times people misunderstand these. But problems is really fascinating because they generally start with statements like this. Is it true that, or somebody told me that, or what could go wrong if, or your competitor said that. So I used to get all these with fiberglass pools. Now, again, I'm using pools as an example, but I could do the same thing with my marketing agency, which is a straight B2B service-based business. It doesn't change, folks. So please, please, please do not exclude yourself from the principles that I'm teaching right now, because there's no exceptions here. Okay, so with pools, I used to get asked these types of questions. So Marcus, is it true that fiberglass pools are ugly? Are fiberglass pools cheap? What are some of the problems with fiberglass pools? Do fiberglass pools pop out of the ground? Do fiberglass pools look like a bathtub? So all of these are negative-based questions, but here's what's so powerful about them. Guess what? Anybody that searches these questions, they're interested in buying a fiberglass pool. In other words, anybody that searches a negative question online about a product or a service or a company, generally speaking, is looking to buy the thing. And they're trying to verify whether or not they're making a mistake. And so understanding this and understanding that people were constantly asking about the problems of fiberglass pools. One of the best articles we ever did was from my partner, Jason. He wrote top 5 fiberglass pool problems and solutions. So he talked about the inherent problems with fiberglass pools. He did not ignore the question. And because he did not ignore the question, what was the result? Okay, here's where it gets really cool. Pay attention. This is super, super awesome sauce. So here's a list of the number 1 phrases that generate the most traffic to the website over the next, the most leads to the website over the next few years. So the number 1 with 56 leads that came from it was River Pools and Spas, but I don't count that one because that's our company name. So the rest of the people were folks that didn't know who they wanted to engage. They just went online, they had a question. And so the number 1 phrase that generated the most sales appointments to our website was fiberglass pools problems. Isn't that cool? How's that possible? Because when people are serious about buying something, they look for how could it go wrong? And the key for you to understand with your business is the number 1 way in life to resolve a concern or an issue is to address it before it becomes a concern. That's right. Address it before it becomes a concern. All right. And so hopefully you're seeing how this could apply to you. Now, that article generated millions in sales for us. But I'm curious, this is very important. Before we move to verses, stay with this for a second. All right, I want you to do this in chat. It's really important. So please be a joiner. We need to be joiners right now, right, y'all? So I want you to make sure you're responding to everyone so I can see it. If you had to come up with the problems, it doesn't mean problems is in the actual title, but what would be an example of a problems article or video that you would put on your website, in your blog, in your learning center, etc. So let me see if you can think of one. Remember, the typical questions that somebody would ask you is it true that somebody told me that? All right, your competitor said that. All right, so let me see you put one into the chat. Come on, get the ideas rolling in your head. Come on. Come on, I want to see somebody if you can come up with it. Okay, good. So Sheena, that's a really good one that you just put in. So it would be something like this. How safe is Pilates? Colon or question mark, parentheses, injuries to be aware of or potential causes for injuries. So you want to double up, Sheena, like I just did on the title. It's even more effective. Okay, so Kale, when the person we hire doesn't work out. So I'm guessing this could be, I forget what it, I don't know what industry you're in, but you would want to put that in a way that somebody would, okay, it's for headhunter, that's right, you're staffing. So the way that you would do that would be something like, what happens if a staffing company's hire doesn't work out? So that would be the title of the post, okay? Another example would be, what is the failure rate of staffing company hires? That's another one. You see what I'm talking about? These are negative questions, perceived negatives, but they're actually incredibly positive to you from a lead generation, ultimately trust generating standpoint. Virtual assistants ghosting clients, right? Yeah. So that one might be, Amber, what are the biggest drawbacks to hiring virtual assistants? And is it true that virtual assistants ghost clients, question mark, everything you need to know, something like that, okay? Benjamin, you got it. When a home inspector misses a major issue on a home. Okay, so the question there would be, might be the title, would be, what happens if a home inspector misses a major issue on a home? Or is it possible for home inspectors to miss major issues on a home? All right. So Christian, eco-friendly wood stain. So that's not really, I can see what you're doing there, but it's not the question as the title of the post. So the title of the post would be something like, how safe is wood stain and what are your best eco-friendly options, right? Because it has to denote there's a problem. or a negative or a concern, something like that. Okay. All right, good, good. So now you're starting to get it. Now you're starting to get it. All right. Is it true that wood stain is bad for the environment? Good, Christian. You nailed that one. Okay. Erica said, should I buy a home now or should I wait? That's yeah, yes, yes. I could see you doing that. And there's a couple different ways to spin that. That would make for a great interactive tool on your website, by the way. Should I buy a home now or should I wait? That's a really killer tool for your website if you could come up with an interactive tool. Okay, good. So we've done two of them. So we've done costs and we've done problems. And hopefully you're starting to see the vision of, okay, I'm seeing how this is working. So let's do comparisons. This is incredibly important comparisons. This is prolific in every industry. So how many times have you been asked, so if you were me, which would you choose? Or tell me about this option versus that option, or that accessory versus this accessory. You know, I used to get asked all the time when I was selling pools, Marcus, be honest, tell me, why should I choose concrete, or why should I choose, fiberglass over concrete? Now, the key though, when you're doing comparisons online is you can't be biased. It doesn't work because people sniff it out, they smell it right away. So let me give you an example of what unbiased looks like online. And I want you to think, does my content sound like this right now? So we produce an article here, fiberglass versus vinyl versus concrete pools, an honest comparison. The title itself, just look at the title itself. You can't tell if they're going to try to push you in a particular direction. Too often, I look at titles of articles and videos online and I can see what your opinion is, your bias is as an organization. Do not allow your bias to seep into your titles, into your openings. Don't do it because everybody can sense it and they're probably not going to click on it because of it. But then look at the opening sentence. Is there an unbiased comparison of fiberglass and ground pools, vinyl liner pools, and concrete pools on the internet? Look at that. This is so good. And I'm just going to skip to the final paragraph. The approach is simple. I list the advantages and disadvantages of fiberglass and ground pools, vinyl liner pools, and concrete pools. And then back off so you can form your own opinion. Isn't that awesome? How often does somebody speak to you like that online? And so you got to be very disarming with your content. So if I was producing that video, I would say something like this. Let's say the video was concrete versus fiberglass pools. I'd say, one of the questions we get here all the time at River Pools is, Marcus, be honest. Tell me, why should I choose fiberglass over concrete? And the truth is you shouldn't always choose fiberglass over concrete. In fact, there are times when concrete is the better option. So what this video is going to do, it's going to explain to you honestly and transparently the pros and the cons of both types of swimming pools. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a great sense as to which is the right choice for you. All right. So that's how we might do that video right there. If I was doing it for my marketing agency, right, and they were looking at HubSpot, same thing. So you might be sitting there asking yourself right now, should I get HubSpot? Is it the right marketing automation tool for my business? Well, it's not for everybody, but it certainly is for some. And so what this video is going to do, it's going to explain to you the pros and cons of HubSpot. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a great sense as to whether or not it's the right marketing automation tool for your business. Ta-da! You see, same pattern, same style over and over again. That's disarming. Point though being is comparison-based content is incredibly effective. And so as you'll see from this, today, if you go online, you compare any type of in-ground pool, we're the first ones you're going to see. And this has generated now millions in sales. And for even when we don't sell the thing, concrete versus vinyl pool, we don't sell those two types of pools. But do I want to show up when people search for that? Of course I do. Why? Because I want to inject myself in that conversation. So do you. So you can draft off of existing leaders in the marketplace, compare them, inject yourself into the conversation. That's what thought leaders do, right? This is why you can be so nimble. You can be a digital David in the land of Goliath. The stuff that I'm talking about right now, you think those big box red tape corporations are going to do what we're talking about right now? Heck no, they ain't going to do this. This is how you can be the true digital David. You do not have to play by everybody's rules. And so because we did this, we just continue to blow up and blow up and blow up. So real quick, I've got the pattern by now in chat. I want you to put a comparison question that you get all the time and try to do it in a complete sentence like you would put it online. This versus that, which is the best choice for me or whatever. Okay, I want you to put that in the chat, and let's see if you got the vision. Okay, which is better, Pilates or yoga? I like it, Sheena. And what you can do, you can go even further and you can say for whom? Pilates or yoga for, let's say, women that are pregnant or something like that, right? Like anything that you can think of in that regard, or elderly, or whatever. I mean, for children or whatever. But specificity is really, really effective. Okay. Which is better, water-based or oil-based stain? Once again, Michael, on this one, I would say something like this: water-based versus oil-based stain, which is best for your, and then choose the application. For your deck outside, your wooden deck outside, is it for something else? So put the specific thing. Notice if I went through each one of these, I'm almost always, every single time, I'm going to say, here's how you need to be more specific. Here's how you need to be more specific. So Gail, for yours, is outsource IT the right choice for my business? It's fine, but outsource versus insourced IT, or outsource versus in-house IT, which is the best choice for my small business? Now, I really love how you put small business in there, right? Because we're being specific, but I like having the verses as well. All right. Why should I use a headhunter when I can post jobs on LinkedIn and Indeed? Right. Okay. So using a headhunter versus LinkedIn and Indeed, which is the best route to take, or what's the best choice for me? So you just want to make sure, see, the way you said that, Kale, I can tell you're a headhunter company. But if you do a straight versus, I can't tell. See what I'm saying? Cool. Is it better to paint or stain my deck? That's good, but what type of deck, Christian? What type of deck? Like my deck on my house, Marcus. Okay, that's fine. But you got to be more specific. Always think specificity. Should I pay for a professional home inspection, or can I use an inspection checklist on my own? And that's a really, really good one right there, Benjamin. You got it. High five. Okay, everybody having fun? Getting groove on? Good. Now let's look at the last but not least of these big five. So we've looked at 3 of the big 5. I'm going to look at one more real quick, which are reviews and best. Now I'm going to combine these last 2. So quick, have you ever been asked before if you were, we like you, we want to do business with you, but if we don't do business with you, is there anybody else that you might recommend? Have you ever been asked that question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people have, most companies have. And if you have, good for you, because it means they trusted you enough to ask. But here's the thing, how do most companies answer that question? Not very honestly. So one night back in the day when I was still a pool guy, I was in Richmond, Virginia, and I sat with this couple for like 2.5 hours. And after 2.5 hours, they said to me, I gave them a quote, and they said, Marcus, we like you, but if we don't use you, is there anybody else that you might recommend? And I thought to myself, oh no, I hate this question. So I didn't sell the pool that night, but I did have a long drive home. And so when I got home, I said, well, they asked a question, so I'm going to write about it. They asked, you answer, right? And so I wrote this article right here. Who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia? Review/ratings. And I came up with a list of 5 of the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia, one of my main areas for installing pools. Now, first off, did I put myself on that list? Yes or no? No, I did not. You're like, what? Why not, Marcus? Because if I put myself on a best of list, then it's going to sound pretty biased. Now, I can use third-party information if I want to, and I can slip myself in, but look, here's the best way to do this. I want you to look at the first couple paragraphs here. I want you to tell me your impression of this company writing this. Each year, we at River Pools and Spas meet with well over 100 households in the Central Virginia, Richmond area with respect to their in-ground swimming pool installation. And because so many folks know our thoughts and feelings from this website on all things pool construction, they often ask us, who are some of the other builders competitors we have in the area? We're never once to shy away from being blatantly honest with respect to the competition. We want our customers to be as informed as possible. Here's a list of some of the companies that have a solid in-ground pool building history in the Richmond area. So what's your impression of that company right now? You're like, I think they're pretty honest. Yeah. Do you feel like they're an expert? Yeah. Why do you feel like they're an expert? Because they were willing to address the elephant in the room. We didn't ignore the question. And because we didn't ignore the question, what's the result? Well, of course, if you go online today and you search best pool builders, Richmond, Virginia, we're the first ones you're going to see, one of the first ones. And that alone has been a cash cow. But let's look at the really, really cool result here. Let's say you went on the Google machine and you typed in reviews, Playmore Pools, Richmond, Virginia. Okay. That's one of our biggest competitors in Richmond, Virginia. Once you get past Yelp, which most people don't click on for pools anyway, the first one you're going to see in organic search is who? Yeah, my website. Who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia? And that's why today, if you're looking up any of my competitors, oftentimes when you're researching them, you're going to research my own competitors on my website. Now, am I going to say anything negative about my competitors? No. Am I going to inject any opinion? No. In fact, I'm going to take the information right from their website. For example, here's Playmore's. Having been around for years, Playmore Pools is located in the mechanical area and specialized in vinyl liner and ground pools. A company also installs fiberglass pools and has a heavy emphasis on automatic pool cover installations. Guess what that comes from? It comes from their website. Are they going to get mad? No. In fact, whenever I've seen a competitor before and they've brought this up, they've said something like this: "Hey, Marcus, I don't know why you created that list, but hey, thanks for putting us on there." And I'm thinking, oh, thank you. And that is how you become the most trusted voice in your space and ultimately the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. This year, actually, we hit about 1 million visitors a month during the summer. And save the business, we went on to manufacture pools. That exploded. And then we became the first franchise of fiberglass pool builders in the US. Now there's river pools of a city near you, most likely. And it just continues to go in that direction. And that, my friends, is the power of They Ask You Answer. Now, I just want to jump here to the end because we only have about 10 minutes left, and I want to take any questions that you have. But before we jump off, just a couple things for you real quick. Number one, make sure you read the book if you haven't read the book. All right. Number two, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. Why? Because I'm a really good follower on LinkedIn. You're going to like following me because I'm going to give you value pretty much every day, one time a day. And it's my best stuff, my best content. It's only there. Number three, so you're watching this and you're thinking, I wish somebody on my team was watching this right now. So let's say you have somebody in your marketing department and you want them to take a free video course that literally costs nothing. It's about 90 minutes. It's got a bunch of video chapters that I created for you for free. All you have to do is email a blank email, just send nothing to this email right here, resources@impactplus.com. What will happen is you'll get a response that gives you access to this course. It's the They Ask You Answer Basics course. Again, I created it so that when people watch me, they always say, I wish my marketing team was here. This allows them to get a full course from me on what we just talked about. It's more information than what we just talked about. And they get it and it costs nothing. Okay. There's no opt-in even. This is it. There's no opt-in. So with that being said, if you have a personal question for me, you can reach out Marcus@marcussheridan.com and you see the website. And so what questions do you have, if any? Now's the time in chat. I want you to go ahead and put any questions you have in here. And as I'm waiting for questions, I'm just going to tell you a few things that I see over and over again. One of the most important, please put those questions in. And Leah, you can jump into if you want to.
All right. Great.
As well. Here's the thing. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is they overcomplicate this. All right. And so keep it simple. It's so KISS all day long, right? And so let's be very, very careful when you look at this. You don't want a bunch of people on the team approving content and all this stuff. Just don't do it. Don't do it. And so Benjamin said, did I overcomplicate this blog? I don't know if you're going to overcomplicate a cost article, Benjamin. I'm not going to click on it just now, but my sense is that if you really were thorough, here's the thing about content. Content, you want to be very thorough. You just don't want to overcomplicate the process of getting it. You don't want too many approvers on your team, things like that. Now, you're going to be more successful if They Ask You Answer if somebody on your team has the full-time responsibility of content production. So right now, my agency, we train people to implement They Ask You Answer, kind of like EOS or Scaling Up or any of those, like, any of those systems that are out there. We do Scaling Up. We love it. And we have a coach because it's really, really effective. And so we also coach people the same way we get coached when it comes to They Ask You Answer. All right. And so, a lot of the stuff that I've told you is just from mountains of data that we have. I mean, we've got so many examples at this point of companies that are doing this and doing this well. Okay, so let's look at some of your questions. What are some, okay, so Amber asked about assignment selling. Yeah, and if I had time today, I would have gone into it. I didn't quite get to it. So when the key, assignment selling is something that if you get a chance, go ahead and Google that today and just type in like assignment selling or type in, yeah, that'll do it because I invented assignment selling, like the phrase. And so you'll find plenty of stuff in Google about me teaching or my team teaching assignment selling and different examples of it. The key with assignment selling is what we found is the more content somebody consumes of yours, the more the closing rates go up. It's pretty obvious, but we've also found that there's a tipping point number. If they hit a certain number of content consumption, the the closing rates explode. So your sales team oftentimes fails to deliver content in an effective way to the prospect. And so one of the things that we have to do often is teach sales teams how to integrate content into the sales process. We call it assignment selling. Now, the key to doing assignment selling well is explaining the why you're giving the assignment. In other words, what's in it for them. And then you get an actual confirmation. The big mistake that companies make is they say, hey, I'm going to send you this video. It'd be great if you could give a look before our appointment. That's dumb. It's not effective. Don't do it that way. Be more effective. Give the clear why and get a confirmation. So make sure you research assignment selling when you get a chance, because it is just life-changing for sales teams that do it right. Great question, Amber. Thank you. Are you doing videos on YouTube and embedding on a website or another video platform? Great question, Kale. So absolutely, we put our educational videos on YouTube. That being said, I generally don't put YouTube videos on the website because you can't measure the analytics on the website that way. You can't test very well. Whereas if you're using another platform like Wistia or Vidyard, or HubSpot's got its own now, it's like, or is going to have its own. Is that a secret I just told? Anyway, with that being said, just make sure that you can measure the thing. So you want to be able to measure it, and you can't measure it if you're embedding YouTube videos on your site. And I like to measure everything. Is it better in the digital world that we live in to have a blog or a YouTube video? Obviously both, but we found that one is better. I'm not sure if I totally understand that question. Now, about a blog, real quick, everybody, and this might answer the question. When it comes to SEO right now, search engine optimization, text is still better. You should absolutely have educational articles on your website. But the educational articles you have, I would have it in a learning center. So a learning center is something I've written a lot about. So go online and just search Learning Centers Marcus Sheridan, and you'll learn a lot about learning centers. And so the way that learning centers work is you have educational articles. Just think about like imagine a section of your website, and you can go to the River Pools and Spas website right now, and you'll find this on the homepage, our learning center. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see like the preview to the Learning Center, because the Learning Center should feel like the mecca of learning within that industry they've just founded on your website. It should have educational articles. It should have your video library. It should have things like customer case studies in there in your Learning Center, or your Knowledge Center, whatever you want to call it. But I like Learning Center and Knowledge Center. Those are the two majors that I use. You might have like digital brochures there. You might have like pricing calculators in there. You might have your buying guides in there, but that's your learning center. And you want to build a true, robust learning center. I don't use the word blog anymore, even though you still see the word blog on the River Pools website. Why? Just because it's a famous blog and people come looking for the River Pools blog. Otherwise, I would have taken it down a long time ago, but we still have a separate learning center, but the blog is found in the learning center under educational articles. Okay. All right. Is it better? Okay. So I think those are the major questions that I can see. Leah, do you see any more questions that I've missed?
Yeah, I just submitted a quick one. It was in your answer for the last one. I had a question. You said you were talking about what's working in SEO today. How do you stay up to date on what's working in SEO? Is there a resource you use, or is it just kind of through your own?
So in terms of SEO, everybody, this is I love the question. The most effective SEO strategy all time, bar none, they ask you answer. You think about Google's obsession. I'm going to give the best, most specific, relevant answer to my customers' search. That's what their obsession is. Other than like dominating the world and making money, their obsession is doing just that. And so what does they ask you answer? I'm going to give the best, most specific, relevant answer to my customers' questions. It's the same thing. So over the course of time, as Google has evolved their algorithm, each time they've evolved it, those that have been doing the ask you answer have gotten better and better and better, like results. And this is why you see people do the ask you answer. They don't even have a nice looking website. They got an ugly website. And they might not even have even great technical SEO, but like boom, total explosion, because there's an obsession with the way they think. And so I just gave you the best SEO strategy you'll ever have, bar none, if you follow the ask you answer, following the big five, because those topics, those are like huge traffic topics. Again, because nobody talks about them, and you're going to do really well. But even outside of SEO, keep in mind, you should be doing this. Even if you never got a visitor from search, from a user experience standpoint, that's a major reason to do it. And just so to give your sales team that content to integrate into the sales process. That's another reason why I would be doing it. Okay. For those of us that have an industry specific CRM, What is a great website client tracking tool? Okay, that's that those legacy industry specific CRMs, Kale. Daggone it. I gotta tell you, I don't love them because they don't talk. They don't talk. We need tools that talk, right? With that being said, HubSpot could still be used as a like a tracking tool, and that's what there's other ones out there, and I'm just trying to I'm trying to think of one, and I can't think of one right now, and I feel dumb for not being able to think one. But there's other ones. I just can't think of it right now. Any others that you see, Leah?
I think that's all of them right now. Marcus, that was really great. I love how you were able to make it interactive for everyone and all the
Yay,
viewers.
interactive.
Yeah, and take that action while they were watching. That's great. Thank you guys for attending. This was recorded and you will all receive a recap in the next 24 hours that will include all the resources mentioned and a link to rewatch it or share it with your team. But also with your team, he has this lesson here. Remember to email him at resources at Impact Plus. And as always, if you have any further questions or we can provide some additional help for your organization, reach out to us at info@petracoach.com. And Marcus, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, everybody. You're awesome.
Everyone have a great Monday.
Let's do it.